Thank you for coming, for attending this Dharma talk. Thank you for all of your help in supporting this community, both by attending, by practicing, and by financially supporting us. We need your help. Please continue if you can. This evening's Dharma talk is a kind of something I want to talk about. It's a little bit of a clumsy title, I think. It's Inquire. It's an I word. Inquire. Don't improve. So I'm not against improvement. I'm just saying that if you focus on improvement with a sitting practice of meditation, with an awareness practice, we tend to treat it more like a mundane path of, are we getting somewhere? Are we making progress? Are we less confused? Are we more clear? And so on and so forth. Continue to evaluate who we are, where we are, how we're doing. Is there negativity decreasing, and so on and so forth. This is not therapy. Therapy, not against it. In fact, Senchu, who taught the class last night, is a therapist. So we have several therapists in the community, along with other professional people. But what I'm saying is, what I'm suggesting is to holding still, sitting symmetrical, all the senses open, and the attitude is to just receive or observe. And if something comes up, inquire into that. To inquire if thoughts come up about this or that, not inquire with a thought process or the analysis or the judgment, but to inquire just like you'd be if you were sitting on the edge of a woods and you saw a rustle in the bushes, and you would inquire, what is that? You would immediately say, well, it's a rabbit. It would have to be. It could be an armadillo that escaped from somebody's pantry, couldn't it? I'm checking with the person that knows stuff back here. What am I saying? What am I emphasizing? I'm saying, inquire what that is. What is that? The why questions will take you in a circle of why, because. They can be relatively helpful. You may want to do that, but do not do that while you're practicing sitting meditation or shikantaza. Let's sit down, hold still, whatever shows up. You could say, what is that? And observe what that is. All you might really see, to use that same image, is just a bunch of rustling. You may not, but if you try to come to a conclusion about that before, because of your anxiousness to get better, to improve, to deal with the petty aspects of your mind, the passion, aggression, and ignorance that causes you and those close to you so much havoc. What I'm recommending is you look at it closely. You can do this. This takes a long time. You're holding still. Maybe nothing happens for a few minutes. Maybe you're thinking about what you should be doing, mowing your lawn, getting the dishes done. Don't turn on the dryer or turn it off. Or see, why is the dryer making a rattling sound? That happened at our house a couple of nights ago, and I thought, well, something heavy is in there. I went in there, and one of the blades that's hooked to the inside was loose, and it was tumbling around in there. So inquire. You might have to go and look and see what it is rather than sit back and speculate. Well, is it this or is it that, or is it guesswork, speculation? Don't do it. Look right at it. Go and look right in the dryer of your mind. Look at it, observe what it is. Don't just listen to the tumbling and speculate. Think about it. Maybe not a very good example of that, but that's what came up. Very interesting to have the experience as a meditator when you come to, I don't know if you call it a conclusion, when you begin to realize that you have a long way to go, that you have to look more deeply into this labyrinth called consciousness, that it's not just a surface. That surface area is provided by your ego, your self-centeredness, and it will take you this way. It's just a bunch of propaganda. And it will take you this way, and it will use, where does it get its energy from? Passion, grasping, wanting, craving, greediness, anger. Something shows up you don't like, rather than look at it, receive it, which you may be able to do through the sitting practice of meditation. But train yourself to receive what happens in your mind rather than fight with it, agree with it. Either one. Don't do either one. Or shut it down or turn away from it. It is damn hard to do. I'm not saying that you might have an easier time of it than I did. I know people who have been meditating for many years, sometimes decades, that still have work to do. I'm not trying to present something disappointing to you. I'm not saying you won't realize your true nature in a few years, but it's unlikely, because what shows up here as a human form is not just your lifetime of 25, 35, 45, 50 years, or whatever it may be. You've been here forever. And here you are again in a human form, looking at this again. Don't miss your life. Look closely at who this is and what this is. Won't come to any conclusions about it. And if you do, just observe the conclusion, but don't second the motion. Don't agree with anything. Don't disagree with anything, and don't ignore anything. Those are the three poisons again. And classical teaching of the Buddha's Dharma. Very important. What Trungpa Rinpoche would say is, tell you to do is make friends with yourself on a deep level. Instead of fighting with yourself, instead of covering up your negativity, get in and work with that just like you would a small child. You would not necessarily punish them or fight with them. Treat your mind in that way with respect. So inquire. What is that? We're sitting, maybe everything is fine for 10, 15 minutes, and then maybe a heavy cloud comes over, or possibly intense boredom starts to show up. Be curious about the boredom. Or maybe you don't have any boredom, but you hear other people talking about boredom, and I'm never bored. I'm always thinking about something or dreaming about something. So look deeply into it. Look, whatever shows up, look right at it. If you look right at it, it starts to come apart, and you start to go into the nature of what arises, into that which prevents you from seeing what it is, which are the preconceptions about it. When you start to feel like you don't know what it is, that means you're actually starting to go into the darkness, or you still need to look more and more deeply. This can show up in post-meditation. It's less likely, but it can. Each person is wired differently. Their consciousness, the way they work with passion, aggression, and ignorance, hope and fear, pride, envy, and so on, is going to be different, say, than the person sitting right next to you. That's why each person needs to do that themselves. You need to do it. The teaching person, no matter how great of a teacher they are, can only encourage you to look at it, yourself. Even if they're very intelligent, erudite, and conceptually some kind of a genius in that area, working with concepts and ideas that point to the nature of reality, as has been done, you still have to do it. You might get inspiration from reading Dogen Zenji, Vasubandhu, Wenung, other teachers. You have to look at it. So once you meet the teacher, if you've met one, then listen. Give the benefit of the doubt to that energy that's coming through the lineage, down through the centuries, down to this present moment. Sometimes Trungpa Rinpoche would call this a Buddha Dharma, awakened truth, a Buddha awakened Dharma, truth, awakened truth without credentials. I would say it that way, maybe a little differently. I would say awakened truth without proof, without evidence. There's no evidence. If there's evidence, we're right back to the relative situation, which works fine in a courtroom, works great in a courtroom. I don't think there's any other way to do that other than have to have evidence, because this, and this, and there's evidence so that we can hold people responsible for their chaotic or dishonest activity, however may be the case, or just help sort things out for people. They need some kind of backup as evidence. But this situation for you, you will not need proof. You will just know it. You just know this, and it's not an opinion. And if you, as I've said to people before, if you think you're awake, you're not. It's a very statement. I think I'm enlightened. Or am I enlightened? Am I awake? Sometimes people might ask me, am I awake? There are times when I've said yes, depending on who says that. Other times I've said no, and other times I've said, what do you mean by that? Because if you can find out what someone means by that, then you might be in a position to answer it. And that answer still could be something like, I don't know, based on what you think it is. I don't know. Very tempting for any of us to go into the relative idea and try to connect or collect something that gives us some kind of assurance or reassurance. My hearing is better, so you don't have to yell. I went to the hearing doctor, ED, is what they call it, ENT, and she was quite funny. But she said I have the hearing of a 60-year-old. And of course, you all know I'm 58. That's actually funnier than your smiles, so you should really be laughing very hard. What is that?
It's the band.
Okay. That's the high school band. So I can continue to speak about this, inquire, don't improve, and I can also answer questions. If I were to talk more about the improvement part, I'm saying you probably will have some improvement, but not so much if you try to do something that will help you to improve and you keep evaluating, because the thinking process of the mind will actually begin to cover up that which is actual, just bare attention, just the awareness, because the awareness doesn't come to conclusions. But the thinking process, the fourth skandha, concludes. Its very nature is to conclude or have a concept or an idea, a structure, because consciousness itself is too open, does not have reference points that are very supportive to that part of the ego we call narcissism. Can you guys all hear that music? No? It's really nice. It's the Battle Creek Central High School Band, marching band. Thought you might like to know that. Okay, let's have a question. All right.
Sokuzan, what is an evaluation that isn't a conclusion?
So an evaluation will be a conclusion, but what I'm recommending is don't particularly do that. But if you spontaneously start to evaluate, then immediately just be aware of the evaluation rather than try to push it away or judge it. So I say, don't evaluate. Can't really help but do that to some extent, but if you endeavor to not energize that part of the thinking process, and the way you, then it becomes more clear what you're looking at in terms of just the perception of it. You may not know what it is or what it amounts to or what it is in terms of its value, but you will see it. That's why it's important to have the attitude to receive, to observe what shows up, and then when whatever shows up, no matter how bad it smells, no matter how good it tastes, no matter how inconsequential it seems with your subtle kind of knee-jerk evaluation, receive it. Receive the evaluation that was misplaced from the point of view of trying to cover up what's there by evaluating it. Anytime you judge anything, you stop looking at what it is. I don't care what it is. Even if you're watching someone murder someone, which hopefully that doesn't happen to you. If you judge that like with good and bad, it's not that you're not relatively completely correct. But it's all you've done is done something that anybody could look and say, well, probably shouldn't murder someone, or that's not a good idea. We should call the police, or I should try to stop them. All the relative things. So those things work fine in the relative area, and we should do that. We should work with that. But if you try to use that same process when it comes to the fundamental nature of reality, not just a relative illusion. This is an illusion. If you're interested in the spiritual path, I may be able to help you. I can't guarantee it, but I'm looking at something that I have no proof for. That is, as far as I can see, is the truth. And it's not opposed to the lie. In fact, in fiction, it's not separate from the lie. The ultimate nature of doesn't exclude anything, including relative. That's why it's so difficult to figure it out, come to a conclusion about it, or evaluate it. Go ahead.
Sokuzan, it seems easy for me to look at evaluations and how you talk about the simplicity of mundane tasks, like the laundry needs to be folded or just any kind of given thing that we're doing. What is that simplicity when we're looking at things that are arising in the mind stream?
What do you mean? What is it?
How do we work with all of those intense evaluations in a way that is dancing with the situation and not
I
striking
mean, like judging what somebody's just said or done?
anything? Yeah.
Well, that's not folding laundry. What is it you want to know? Let's do it that way. I'm not trying to make things difficult. I would like to be very direct with my response. If I can. Ask me.
How do we include evaluations in a way that's sane?
Very simple. Very simple. If something happens and the evaluation comes up, then that's very simple. It's just the evaluation. That shouldn't happen, or I should stop that, or I need to push that away, or I need to leave the room. Those are very simple, very direct, very mundane. But when they get complicated as far as judging or evaluating or condemning someone, something, including yourself or anything, you start to cover that up with the smoke and the cloudiness of the three poisons: passion, aggression, ignorance. Pride is very, very hard to see. The very nature of pride is to just think you're right. It takes a long time to see that. When you can see passion, grasping, you can see aggression, pushing, you can get a little glimpse of shutting down or distracting yourself. But pride is just very, very difficult to see. More?
Sure. If there's the simple evaluation of something like I need to leave the room, and then it becomes cluttered with all of these other with the poisons, is it necessary to return to something to function?
There's not going to be a standard for that. So you can't, I mean, there are people who work with it that way, that you should do this, you should do that. And I would say, just observe, you'll know what to do. You need to do a lot of sitting meditation. And this is taught differently by different people. I say, sit down, hold still, and sharpen this blade of awareness, so that when you go to, in your everyday activity, use that simple kind of a metaphor, that when you do think or process or evaluate anything, it's very clear and very clean. And you see clearly what something is, not run into a bunch of knots of confusion of right and wrong, should be, shouldn't be, and a constant commentary around that evaluation, coming to conclusions or opinions or judgments about yourself or others. Ego, self-centeredness, that part of the consciousness we call the seventh, or the Klesha mind, does not like being wrong. It wants to be correct and right. And if you have intense emotions and feelings about anything, you want something to validate and judge that in such a way that you feel that you have a right to have that emotion or that feeling. and you will find proof more than likely. So I can come back to the question, but it's not very clear what it is you're asking me, because I'm responding to part of the rotisserie that's going on in your mind stream. And all I can say is look clearly so that the circularity of it starts to slow down, because if you're looking for results, very nature of looking for results or looking for a cause will take you in circles. The Buddha did that 2,500 years ago. He looked at confusion and saw that it was going in circles. And he saw that when something would show up, you didn't want that. When something else would show up, you wanted that. Something else would show up, you would distract yourself from it. Passion, aggression, ignorance, wanting things to be different than they are. Whatever shows up, we want more of it. It's not enough. Whatever shows up, we want less of it. It's a very simple way of putting it. But whatever shows up, we're not interested. We would distract ourselves. This is the second noble truth. Wanting something else causes, according to the Buddha, the first one of suffering, discontent. And the fundamental understanding there is talked about many times is thinking there's a separate being here from other beings who seem to be separated over there. The fundamental misunderstanding or mistaken identity is thinking there's a solid separate being anywhere. Through the sitting practice of meditation, the passion, aggression, and ignorance may continue to ramp up and go away and get larger, get smaller, but eventually you eventually will see that there's no observer of that. Pardon. If you see that there isn't anyone, then anything that happens in this area, you won't defend against it. Anything that happens in this area, you won't necessarily puff up with it. Anything that happens, you won't necessarily distract yourself from, because there isn't anyone. So does that mean you don't care what happens? Not exactly. It's more like you're aware of everything that's happening, but you don't take a position on any of it, even though relative truth is telling you this is wrong and this should be stopped, and this over here is totally good and should be happening. You'll still see that, but you will not pick sides. More? And why wouldn't you pick sides? You tell me. You've been studying for a long time. Why wouldn't you, even though you see the differentiation and desire that's happening there, why wouldn't you choose sides?
First thing that came up is you see that there aren't any sides.
Very, very good. Everything's dependently arisen. There's no fundamentally good thing or fundamentally bad thing. There's just energy that arises here and goes down over here, arises over here and goes down over there. Just the energy. It's very difficult not to personalize everything that's out there happening in the world. Look at the political situation. It's just horrible. And those in that situation and the news situations are all about pointing fingers at each other. No one there's taking the blame for anything. It's all over the place. There is no good and evil. These are constructs. That's not saying that there isn't some kind of a backup for that shows why this might not be a very good situation to be hurting someone or torturing someone. But we totally avoid all the things that brought us to that situation where that person was so upset, so miserable, so frightened that they started dumping that fear onto someone else. That's what we miss, because it's the distance between what appears to be a first cause and a last effect is so great. Why is it so great? There is no location. There is no otherness anywhere. You have to see it. If you don't, then you'll continue to look for something else, look for proof. More further questions, please.
Andrew Bowing, you said inquire, but don't do it with the thinking process. The question, what is it?
Yes.
Feels like it's in the realm of thinking.
It is.
How do we ask that question without utilizing the thinking process?
Just watch the thinking process arise and don't fuel it. It's going to come up. What is that? The why question, the why question is going to get you a because immediately. And so then you go in a circle. But what, when something arises, when you say, what is that? there's a somewhat of a pause there where you have you have the opportunity to just receive what that is, and it's right in the middle of its camouflage, right in the middle of not knowing what that is. More about it if you have it. I'm excited to go in that direction.
It seems like asking that question, thoughts show up immediately in response to
They do.
that question.
They do, yes.
Are you saying there's some aspect of that is beyond the thinking process?
It's the beginning of that, because the circularity part, the directness is there. The circle to go away into some other search party looking for results. That's not happening because the intention is direct. It's right there, and you're not looking for a particular result. You're looking at what that is. What is that? Not why is that? What is that? And so thoughts may assemble around that to point at that or explain that to you, but it's still in the realm of awareness. We're not trying to get rid of thinking.
Are we actually looking for what something is?
Yes. Exactly. You want to know what that is. I can tell you what it is, but it may take you another 40 years to see what it is. So you can use these words out of what you're looking at and not what you think about. You might have to look at a lot of thoughts come up and try to explain that to you over and over and over again. Don't believe them. Don't disbelieve them. Don't ignore them. If thoughts arise, just observe. You've never heard me say, at least not in the last 20 years, say label thinking and return to your breath like I was taught many years ago. No, I say, look at the thoughts. Think even. Good area to look into. Peer appearance, keep coming.
At some point you said don't look for something.
I did.
So when we ask what is it, are we looking for?
No, if you're looking for, then you already think it's a squirrel or a rabbit in the woods, and you're looking for a sign of that. You're looking for it. You're already projecting onto it and waiting for that to come up and say, yep, that's a rabbit, or no, that's a fox, or no, that's any number of things. Could be animals in the woods. Just to continue to use that image. So if you're looking at what happens in the mind, the anger that comes up, just receive the anger. Just look at the anger. And then if thoughts arise around it, the judge and push and pull, then just watch those. As long as you're receiving the anger, as long as you're receiving the intensity, the frustration, without turning away from that and trying to blame somebody for it, or blaming yourself for it, or endeavoring to just shut it down, shut it off, look away, distract yourself, go find something else to do. Those are the three poisons. And this, what I'm referring to here, I don't think is, I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's much less likely to happen if you have no sitting practice to train your mind to just watch the movement of the mind, watch what shows up, the thoughts that arise, hang around a bit, taper off, go away, other thoughts come, emotions, possibly some memories come and go. It's quite a bit like another image that I like to use sometimes. It's quite a bit like sitting on a train and just watching scenery go by. So you don't really fasten on anything. You just keeps moving and moving, maybe very slow, maybe very fast. More.
If I see something that I'm doing that I don't like and want to stop, it feels like walking a tightrope.
Yes.
Feels like any sort of movement is going to tip me over into trying to do something about it or improve it.
That's what you're describing is awareness. You haven't done it yet.
What?
I said you haven't. You just told me that any movement is going to tip me over. Well, you haven't tipped over yet. You're just telling me. You're just describing what it looks like. Say more if you have. You want to go further there. I'll get to you in a moment, Sanho. I saw your hand. Go ahead.
Is there is the intention to stay on the tightrope? And not fall off into improvement?
The tightrope is improvement. So better to fall off. When I say better, I'm not saying that I'm agreeing with that, but if you feel that if the awareness is prioritized, so it's about being aware. It's not about being correct. It's not about not being wrong. It's not about any dynamic in that area, any conceptual area, anything you can name, or so it's about being aware. So you may have to watch yourself, as you were indicating there, kind of falling off or seeing yourself tip. Might have to watch that quite a while without adding any more chaos to it. No more chatter about there I go again. As soon as you say there I go again, you've just set it up for that to happen 10 minutes from now or 3 days from now. There I go again. In other words, trying to improve. And I'm not saying, like I said earlier, I'm not saying if you practice meditation over a long period of time that you won't improve by way of, say, less argument with others, more ability to just listen to others, but it won't show up as a credential. It's just something you'll do. Someone else might notice that you listen more. I had someone who used to be a student of mine. Their father came and was extremely grateful to me for that working with that person, because they stopped arguing with them. They just listened to them. So that doesn't mean they were an awakened being necessarily. It just means they just stopped disagreeing and arguing with that parent. And so they had a much better relationship from there on. There's no guarantee that that's going to happen in every situation. Very good to listen to people. But that isn't necessarily something that person was trying to do, trying to show up as a really good listener. They just naturally listened better because they were listening to their own mind, watching their own mind show up and disappear, show up and disappear. So when they ran into that parent again, they were a lot more curious about what was happening with them. Just a natural thing, not a matter of improving more. Sano.
So I know about, so I have pinched nerves in my back and arms and legs. So sitting here tonight, the pain is coming quite extremely in waves. And I'm wondering, is the teaching to continue to move and possibly distract the people around me? Is the teaching to get up and leave? Like, I don't know what to do.
I see. So just to go into the traditional way of the three types of pain and their variations is the pain of pain, which you're describing, the pain of alternation, which things are going fine, but you're still suffering because you think things are going to go to hell in a handbasket pretty quick. So you're already suffering in the midst of your pleasure. And then the last one is the pain of the composite, which most people cannot see because they're so busy ignoring or pushing or pulling or reinforcing the illusion of a separate self that can win or lose. In your situation, I would say the way you're describing it, I would say try to find a way to be comfortable. You don't have to sit here and continue. And you're certainly, if you'd like to leave, you're certainly excused to go and lay down or do whatever you need to do. But there's nothing is particularly gained by, even though it's taught differently in different, especially in the Zen tradition, about just more martial or militaristic kind of approach to muscle through, more of a masculine approach to it. And I don't think that's particularly helpful to do it that way, even though I practiced some of that. So I would say, if you'd like to leave, please go ahead.
So I don't, but I also don't want to be distracting. And it hasn't, for me, gotten to a point where I feel the need to get up and leave and move around, which is what settling down the pain. I'm just wondering, I guess the question is, I don't feel inspired to go and move around, but is there a form or a teaching to where I should, out of respect for others, or what I perceive to be respect for others?
Well said. Well said. They're fine with it. Everyone has some people just shift around a lot. They may not be in maybe the kind of pain you're in, but it's, just keep that to a minimum. We don't want, if someone comes in here and just continues to move and move and move, we might recommend that they sit in another room, maybe. But usually you can handle that. That's just part of just like we can't stop motorcycles from riding by outside or people walking, chattering up beside the monastery, arguing about the weather, something like that, which is a good thing to argue about. So I would say it's very situational. It's up to you. I don't think you're not really bothering anyone particularly. I don't think it's not bothering anyone.
No, don't ask that.
Junju said yes, you bothered me. So, any questions on Zoom? I'll come back.
Deb Bowing.
Go ahead.
Sokuzan, just getting back to the question that was asked previous about when I go to say, what is that or what is this? I'm thinking my tendency is going to want to label things in order to even identify in some way. Is that okay to just look at the
Yes.
labeling and
Yes.
then go from there?
Yes,
Deb
yeah,
Bowing.
yes, and so some people might label more than others, but that wears out after a while. It just takes time, and by saying that, I'm also not telling you to label. I'm saying you can inquire, what is that? And emotions come up, what is that? And if you find yourself labeling, that's all right. I'm also not saying as I just said a moment ago, that you should do that. Just watch it's possible to look at something without having any idea of what it is. It just takes a lot of practice to do that. And it's not an accomplishment so much as it's just an open dimension of the mind where the consciousness or the awareness is like emphasizing the sky over the clouds. The clouds are great. They're fluffy. They're stretched out. They're all those technical words for clouds. But the space in which the clouds arise doesn't do anything. And that's the area that is where your true nature resides, if I may say it that way.
Thank you, Deb Bowing.
Yes. Yeah.
Beyond Bowing. In my mind, there seems to be something a little different about a conclusion happening on the cushion versus a conclusion that's happening off of the cushion. What's the difference there?
Well, you could tell me what your differentiation is, and then I'll see if I have one too, or one similar, or if I want to differ with your differentiation.
Okay. I just thinking we had spaghetti tonight. It's like the conclusions. That was very good. The conclusions and evaluations on the cushions are a little more like uncooked spaghetti, and
What?
off the cushion it's more like cooked. It's like more.
Wait,
kind
you
of-
say that again? Okay. The conclusions off the cushion are more like uncooked spaghetti.
The conclusions on the cushion
On the
are a little
cushion.
more like uncooked spaghetti.
Okay, why would you say they're uncooked on the cushion?
Well, they look maybe a little less tangled.
I mean, the ones that are hard in a box and they're like that,
Yeah.
less tangled. In other words, not tangled at all.
Or I don't care if they're tangled, but when I'm off the cushion, they're tangled and I care a lot.
Okay, got it. Okay, go with it. It's starting to work for me now. What do you want to know? Let's do that.
What's different about a conclusion happening on the cushion than a conclusion off the cushion?
So I'm just going to generalize. Off the cushion, there's all kinds of things coming and going. Your body is in motion. So your clarity, your actual clarity, not the kind that supports conclusions, but your clarity around the motion of everything is on the cushion. There's just more clarity. Whereas off the cushion, you're more tangled up into right and wrong belief and disbelief and wanting this and not wanting that. Passion, aggression, and ignorance are more holding sway because your body's in motion, going through a room, you're looking over here, you're looking at this person or that person. I mean, I'm not saying you couldn't be sitting at your computer and doing something very, very simple, which is maybe similar to sitting meditation, but it's not the same. You're still involved in establishing, looking at this way, looking that way. You're not holding a form or returning to a form of stillness. And so, am I getting close to? This is why we need to train. Otherwise, we could just train our minds in our everyday situation, like so many people sometimes teach meditation in action, or some people say, "Well, I just walk in the woods and that's training my mind." No, that's actually entertainment. Walk in the woods and look at the trees. Not against that. You should do a lot of that. It could be very relaxing. But meditation as it's being taught here, Shikantaza, is not about relaxing yourself. That could happen eventually, but that relaxation will come out of seeing that there's really nothing that is twisted into a knot, that is empty. But until you see that knot of passion, aggression, and ignorance, hope and fear, right and wrong, threat or safety is going to seem very, very convincing and can be reinforced by relating to others. Their actions can trigger those unseen or unobserved areas of the consciousness to come out and cause some chaos in your life. More.
Even bowing, what is clarity?
Confusion is clarity.
And what does the observer status have to do with clarity?
If one is clear about the confusion, then there's no observer. There's no status as an observer. There's just confusion. This is the very nature of awakening we're talking about here. The Buddha's first noble truth is life is suffering, or confusion, or delusion. To actually look at the delusion is the clarity. The clarity is not about clarity. It's not a state of mind. That's why it's so difficult to do this, because the more we look, the more confusion, the more difficulty and more challenge we see. And rather than try to actually see that deeply, what that actually is, and see that there's no personhood there. And there's also besides no subjectivity, there's no objectivity there. It is an illusion. But we need to go through these particular Dharma doors or Dharma gates in order to get there. Each one has to go through a different style or kind and different kinds of openings and closures. And I'm very biased. I say, hold still a lot, meditate, watch the movement of the mind. So you get up and interact with your daughter or with your friends or your Sangha. So there's a lot of clarity about the confusion you're dealing with, rather than you have the conclusion you think you should stop it, the confusion you think you should blame, the confusion you think you should run away from it, passion, aggression, ignorance. Again, in other words, you're able to just receive the confusion. That's very difficult if it's coming from someone who's really mad at you and is scolding you and accusing you of something. Very difficult to just receive that rather than say, no, I didn't do that. That's not my fault. This is what all these wars are about. People can actually justify in their minds a bombing people that are just in their houses eating breakfast. And it doesn't matter if they're 50 years old or 3 years old. They're human beings. It sounds a little more disgusting when they hear someone is bombing children, but the parents are getting bombed too. It's horrible stuff. And it's not that it's not wrong or bad or shouldn't be happening. That's true, but the causes and conditions behind that are untraceable. It's like a landslide that you can't see where it's coming from. And this is the same thing when you get off your meditation cushion and walk into whatever environment, whether it's in the Sangha, with other people in the Sangha, whatever it is. That's why the teaching person quite often will act as the world. They'll come at you just like maybe you've not had a good taste of aggression. So maybe the teacher might come after you and bite your head off, so that you get that teaching from someone who's teaching, rather than you get that teaching from someone that you know is not a teacher. They're not a teacher. They're just part of the whole matrix of causes and conditions of passion, aggression, and ignorance is running rampant in the world and hurting people. More?
Beyond bowing is content. Is content any indicator of clarity?
More.
Is the content of the observer as we go through life does the content have anything to do with clarity? Is it?
I like that. I like that. Look on your face.
Good luck.
Yeah, good luck. I like that. You try to answer that one there, buddy. That's a good question, but I would have to say that the content does, but only if you don't ascribe separate values to different parts of the content. Like some content is really valuable and good, and other parts of the content are not valuable and wrong and shouldn't be there and don't have anything to do with. But this one over here really tells us what's really going on. All of those are those areas. Am I getting close to what you're looking for? Or do you have a content you'd like to talk about?
What comes to mind is texture and
Oh, I love that word.
yeah.
Yeah, smooth. What's that other one? Greasy? No, it's not texture. Smooth, rough, slippery. That's kind of a texture. You think of some more? Like if you had 1,500 razor blades all standing upright, you have 1,500 thumbtacks all standing upright, and you run your hand over one and you run your hand over the other, the texture is the same. I mean, they're both hurt. Of course, I'm being silly, but I'm saying I'm endeavoring to help you straighten up and clarify and sharpen up what you're asking me, because I think what you're asking me is valid, but I would like you to present that. And does this content have anything to do with it? Give me some contents. Something brought about this question. Right, Jasheen? Yeah, she said yes. Can you? You want to drift around with it a bit?
Yes.
Okay. Is there another question? Yes, go ahead.
Mizuki bowing. If there's an area of my mind that I've been covering up or just, not looking at for a long time, and you start getting, and I start looking at least little bits of it, can that lead to outflowing out of that area more?
Yes, it can. But if you're a fully ordained monk, you're here to train your mind. And so this is a difficult area, very difficult for anyone to live here and be in this monastery and function in the way you function, the way anyone who lives here functions. Much easier to just come and go and not be here too much, but you're here all the time. So the way in which you're going to be working with that is going to be pretty high pressure. Is that what you're asking me about?
Mizuki bowing. Well, my next question is, how do I work with watching myself outflow out of an area I really don't want to? I don't want to so badly, I'd rather cover it up.
But you're aware that you're covering it up. It's always about awareness. You may have to do that. It's I could use a really intense word. It's really embarrassing and disgusting. Do it anyway. Just do it anyway. You can do it. Don't stop. Continue to sit as much as you can. You're the Eno, function as the Eno, function interacts with Sangha. Sangha is going to give you a hard time. Why? Because they're having a hard time. Go ahead.
Mizuki bowing, precisely because I know they're having a hard time. The story is that I would be putting them first by just covering this negativity up and not outflowing out of it.
Okay, then cover it up, not don't outflow.
May I?
Yes, you may. It's always about awareness. It's not about what you do. This is something Chazon is quoting the teacher, and I can't remember his name. Now, this is basically, and I have to paraphrase about, I'm interested in you talking to his students and having you see clearly. I'm not too concerned with what you do. So I could say that. And I might not be able to say it in the same way.
Suzuku bowing. Can it be enough just to watch yourself cover something?
Yes.
Or
Yes.
eventually?
No, don't give me an or.
I have another question then.
Make it another question. Don't hook stuff together like a choo-choo train. You know,
Bowing. When you talk about confusion, is that anything different or other than not knowing?
I feel that it's different than that, but it's a very similar aspect of consciousness where there's a confusion going on that looks like a lot of energy going this way and that way possibly, but there's also a feeling of just not knowing what that is. Just being perplexed by it. It's sometimes called bewilderment. It has a quality to it that operates in terms of the self-centeredness, bewilderment. You're just bewildered by the situation. So it has an open dimension that it can't find any reference points there. But yet there's a feeling that there should be, there's a little bit of addition going on, subtraction, division, in terms of wanting something to be more clear. Follow me? More? Thank you for the question. Yes, sir. Sano.
So, related to what Mizuku was asking, who I think might still have a question, I was wondering, you used to say life is a practice, not a performance. You don't say that anymore. What happened?
Well, it suddenly became a performance. Yes, go ahead.
Thought about, can you say more?
Yes.
Sound about, will you say more? I can go all day.
Well, yeah, I could do that too. What would you like to know? Let's do that. What would you like to know?
Sound about, I'm just wondering, would you still teach that life is a practice, not a performance?
I would. Yes, there's a lot of things I used to say that I don't. I used to say years ago, when I would talk about suffering, I would say, how do you think I feel? Right. Have you heard me say that lately?
Not very lately, not since the skin pain was at its height.
Yeah. Skin pain. Yeah, how do you think I feel? Miserable. You're correct. Well, not right now. So yeah, I still would say it's something you're working on. You're working on not pretending to be this way or that way. You're endeavoring to not miss your life, to live what's the image that's so often used here in the West? Live the cards you're dealt. Whatever shows up, those are your cards. That's what you do. Whatever shows up, that's how you live. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't go to college or get a degree or live in another way or get married or move to Montana or something different, but not too much in a radical way. Is there a question on Zoom? Susan, don't you have a question? You just should really ask me a question. She's looking up at the ceiling. That's a good sign. Well, that's interesting. She turned her screen off. That's a good idea. That's a good approach. So I'll look. Oh, there you are. I'll have to look for your sister. She's here
I
somewhere.
pressed Susan Bowing. I pressed the wrong button. I'm sorry.
No, that is no problem. Go ahead.
So there is never clarity. Is that true? Bowing.
That is true. Yes. And we use it expediently. So we need to say something about it. But yes, but what's interesting about it is you won't care. because you understand something that the word clarity doesn't apply, the word confusion doesn't apply. Even the word understanding misses the point because it sounds like you're standing under something. So there's no words for this. That it just even the word transcendence implies some kind of relativity, something that's happening. Yes, you'll not be concerned. This doesn't mean that you don't suffer, that you don't miss somebody if they pass away or if they leave your life or something. It doesn't mean that you don't have very, very ordinary human feelings all the time about everything. It's just that the fundamental situation that you thought was true is not true. There are no separate beings. There's no separate Susan. There's no separate Cindy. There's no separate Sokuzan. There's no separate Chisho. Further, Susan?
No, thank you. Bowing.
Thank you. Chisho, you have a question?
Tishwani, yeah, I did. So back to Inquire. When I'm sitting on the cushion, say a sound shows up, and maybe a label shows up along with it, or maybe not. By the time there is even registering that, some other sensation shows up. Maybe a taste shows up, or a sight shows up.
Okay.
So what does Inquire mean when it's just one after another?
That's exactly what I'm referring to. You inquired. There's no time there. It isn't like you inquire for 30 seconds or 3 minutes. As soon as it shows up, there's an inquiry. But there's no. It sounds the way you're describing it. That's how it's done. That's shikantaza. Whatever shows up, then this shows up, then that, then this shows up, and then that, and then nothing shows up for a while. You might have I'm sure you've had periods of time where not much happened at all. Isn't that true?
So you did mention that it slows down. Do the senses really slow down? Bhavin?
That's how it's perceived. Really, nothing. The whole idea of speed is just seems to apply in the place where there's a lot of confusion going on, the speediness of the mind. But eventually, nothing actually fundamentally occurs. It just looks like it. It's an incredibly vivid illusion of otherness and separation and division and differentiation that is unreal. It's an illusion. Yes.
Mosuku bowing. With the idea of inquire, does there need to be some intention not to cover up what comes up, what shows up?
A little bit of that, but also there can be just being aware that there's a little bit of a jumpiness there where you just start to push back on something or cover it up. But a little bit of what you're saying, possibly it can have different kinds of energy around it. Very quick and pushy, or very slow and gradual, moving away from something or covering it up more.
Mosuku bowing. The way I cover up a certain area of negativity is also irritating to people.
How do you know? Wait. That's it. It's also irritating to people. So you got somebody's attention. It's also irritating to people. Yeah. Say more about that irritation that you're causing others.
What can I say? People have complained. You've called me out on it.
The only thing I've told you is get the hell out of the hojo. That's not a complaint, is it? No. What did I complain about? What did I say? I'm a people. I'm part of the Sangha. What did I say?
Well, my discursive or analytical mind will cover up kind of negativity like anger. And I don't want to outflow out of anger.
Then why do you do it? You don't want to do it.
But
You want to do it. No, please don't leave it. We're gonna be all done here in a minute. So I want to hear everything. Every time Susan laughs, I want to hear it.
It's funny.
So now all we have to do is get Cindy to start laughing, and then we're going to have a quorum. So my response to you is, don't worry about it. You're not really that important that you're causing anybody any issue. Not that important. Yes, go ahead.
Soku bowing with a response like you're not that important.
Yeah,
Does that also mean that on some level we have to prioritize the intention to see what's showing up over, I don't know, yeah, making life difficult for others?
if you make life difficult for others, I really feel like you're doing that, and then you could say, well, I'm sorry about that. One time, no more, no explanation. None of that stuff. Just say, whoops, sorry about that. That's it. Move on from there. Okay? We've talked about this a few times. One more question, and then we should close since we're way over our regular time. And Sano, looks like you have one.
Son about, I understand the eight worldly dharmas to say no praise, no blame. I'm reflecting on how for the retreat, we've had a handful of people who've done everything for the retreat. Is praising them a problem, or we just see that we are praising them, saying thank you?
Well, I think we should be grateful to people and tell people that we appreciate all the hard work they do. Certainly appreciate all the work that people have done, and this fundraiser has just been amazing. All the work that goes into it. So those people will all be acknowledged at some point. I'm not going to do it right now, but at some point, very much so. We do acknowledge that. So I think it's good to acknowledge others. Very important to do that. Very good. Thank you so much for your attention and for your indulgence. I even could say it that way. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Hi, my name is Shoka. I'm a monk at SokukoJi, where I'm committed to training my mind under the guidance of my teacher, Sokuzan. We rely on your support for our programming, including a scholarship fund to cover living and tuition costs for those who are practicing full-time at the monastery. Thank you for your generosity.